the game.
Hey there, I'm Kel Sadicki. What started as helping people with their money at my dining room table grew into a 7-figure financial coaching practice. Now I teach others how to build a thriving coaching business of their own. Whether you're just starting out or you've been coaching for years, I'm here to help you make a bigger impact while doing what you love. This is the Financial Coach Academy podcast. Let's dive in.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Financial Coach Academy podcast. I'm your host, Jill Emanuel. I am here filling in for Kelsa while she's gone for her summer sabbatical. If you don't know me, I am one of the mentors for the Financial Coach Academy, and I'm the lead coach for our coaching business, Fiscal Fitness Phoenix. I've been coaching for nearly a decade, and I'm so excited to be here to help you develop your coaching skills and expertise. So thanks so much for joining me. All right, we've got one announcement today. This is related to our Financial Coaches Mastermind. You know that feeling where you are stuck on something in your coaching business and you just need someone to bounce the ideas off of, someone who actually gets what you're going through? Well, most financial coaches wind up trying to solve everything alone, which is why so many get stuck at the same level of income for months or even years. So this is really why the mastermind can be such a game changer. Imagine if you had access to a room full of coaches who've been exactly where you are, people who can look at your sales page and tell you why it's not converting, can help you figure out why your clients aren't taking action and help you get over the hump. That is what our Financial Coaches Mastermind is all about. It gives you a support system, real coaches, real feedback, real results, and enrollment is open through the 21st. So please come check it out. If you want to learn more, hop over to financialcoachacademy.com/mastermind. Again, registration closes on the 21st, and we kick things off with our welcome call on September 23rd. So we would love to see you there. Go check it out. If you've got any questions, of course, please reach out to the team. All right, before we dive in, I want to share a review from one of our amazing mastermind coaches. This coach said, "The clarity that I've gotten from the mastermind is invaluable. I literally feel as though I get it now. I get my own business," if that makes sense. "Before the mastermind, I was all over the place. Now I'm focused and my energy and messaging are clear and focused too." Now, I know you would probably love that in your business, and we'd love to help you gain that. So come on over, check it out, and we'll hope to see you inside the mastermind. All right, so today we are going to be tackling something that I've been observing more and more with my work with financial coaches and quite frankly, just in conversations with clients and people across all industries. And this is a pattern that I keep seeing where talented, capable people are really holding themselves back from doing their best work. And it's not because they don't care. It's not because they lack the skills. It is something else entirely. And so I want us to dive into this today. Now, one of the things that I sort of was thinking about as I was putting this episode together was, what are the things that I keep hearing or seeing that have me thinking about this? And let's just see if any of this sounds relatable. All right, here are some examples of things that I've heard from other coaches. They'll say, "I created a freebie, but I never really put it out there." Or, "Someone asked me about my coaching, but I didn't really follow up." Or, "I have an opportunity to present at this workshop, but I don't think now's the right time." Does any of this sound familiar, right? There's all these opportunities, things that they can do, but yet somehow, for some reason, they aren't following through. Why is it? It's not that they don't want the result that's on the other side. It's not that they're not capable, even if it is a little scary, but why are they not taking action to do the things that they say is what they want to do, right? And I really do believe that at the root of this is a fear of failure, right? And it is maybe showing up in ways that might surprise you. So we want to talk about that today, about how it is creating this cycle where you are avoiding taking meaningful action because you're terrified about not getting it right. So let's talk about it, okay? We're going to talk about how the constant distractions in our world today make it easier than ever to avoid the hard work that actually moves us forward. So it lets this fear of failure be even more easily disguised and gives us so many opportunities for justification. And I really hope that this episode will help you to understand why fear of failure has become such a productivity killer and what you can do to push through it on your own to help your business and to help your clients do the same. So let's talk about what we can probably call a fear of failure epidemic, right? Because it is really permeating so many of us in the business world, right? Let's talk about what fear of failure actually looks like, because it's not always obvious, even to the person who is experiencing it, maybe especially the person who's experienced it. So we really do live in a culture today where everything feels permanent and public, right? Social media makes it so that your mistakes can just follow you forever. And there's this pressure to have everything figured out before you even start. This really creates this paralyzing perfectionism where people would rather do nothing than risk doing something imperfectly. We see this constantly with financial coaches who spend months researching every possible certification instead of just starting to help people, for example. This fear shows up as endless preparation, constant second guessing, and what I'm going to call productive procrastination, which is staying busy with tasks that feel important but don't actually move your business towards your goals. Another way that this manifests is through comparison paralysis. People look at others who seem to have it all figured out and they convince themselves that they are not ready to compete at that level. And then there's also this myth that if we're doing something right, it should feel easy. So when the work feels difficult or uncomfortable, we assume that we're on the wrong path or that we're doing something wrong, instead of recognizing that growth involves discomfort, right? So it doesn't always feel easy, even if we are headed in the right direction. Now let's talk a little bit about our environment and how that makes it easier than ever to avoid the challenging work that creates real results. We are surrounded by more entertainment options, information sources, immediate gratification opportunities than in any generation in history. When something feels hard, there is always an easier alternative just a swipe away, right? And this constant connectivity means that we're never truly focused on one thing for extended periods of time. Even when we're working on important projects, part of our attention is always waiting for the next notification or update. This social media distraction, it really creates this illusion, right, where we feel as though we are being productive, but it might be because we are consuming content and that feels like we're working on our business. So for example, you might spend hours watching videos about marketing strategies without ever actually implementing a marketing strategy, right? So this can definitely trick us into feeling as though we are working, but then feeling very dissatisfied or confused about why we aren't getting results in our business. The other thing that we can see happen is that people fall into a learning trap, right? Where you sort of get addicted to taking courses, reading books, attending webinars, because it feels like progress without the risk of failure, right? So you're out there learning, improving, but there's no risk of people seeing you doing something wrong, making a mistake, putting yourself out there, being told no. So it feels very comfortable to continue doing this over and over and over, and you fall into this pattern of continued learning with this illusion of being productive or making progress in your business, and at the same time feeling totally stuck and frustrated that nothing is happening, right? So as I mentioned this, I can't help but think of the irony that you are, yes, listening to a podcast and learning right now. And I'm glad that you're here. So please keep listening to the podcast, but also go and do something afterwards, right? So go and take some real action. We don't only want to be consumers of information. All right. So the abundance of choices that we face every day really does create decision fatigue. And so by the time that you get around to doing important work, you've likely already exhausted so much of your mental energy on a lot of smaller decisions that didn't really move the business forward. And we also have this new dynamic now in a world of working remotely, which I think most financial coaches do, which is wonderful, right? It's one of the gifts of COVID. I was just talking about this with our podcast producer, actually, of the gifts of COVID, of being able to work from home and the comfort that comes from that. And it allows us to work in our home office, which is great, and save on the commute. But also it can cause a huge distraction when we are trying to get things done, because we can look around our space and think about how we need to do the dishes or do laundry or pick up after the kids. And those things feel more urgent or more important than our longer term big picture goals with our business. And so we wind up feeling very distracted by our environment. So we've got the online distractions, we've got the fear of everything needs to be perfect. Any mistakes out there are going to be out in the world forever. And then we've got internal distractions from the environment that we are in, which all of those things add up to really creating a lot of paralysis in our business and really prevent you from doing the big things that can make a huge difference, right? So the result is that it's really, really easy to stay busy, but never feel like you're actually making progress, right? So then that reinforces this idea that maybe you're not cut out for it after all, because you feel as though you've been doing so much, but you're not seeing any results. So do you see how this is a vicious cycle? It can just keep going and reinforcing this idea that you're failing, even though you haven't actually done anything to put yourself out there to potentially fail. Right. So, all right. So let's dive into this a little bit more. So beyond the fear of failure and distractions, there's also this overwhelming uncertainty about what steps to take next. And this uncertainty becomes another excuse to avoid taking action. So as I mentioned earlier, we have access to so much information, right? We have more strategies than ever, which you would think could make decisions easier, but actually it often makes them a lot harder, because every option seems pretty valid or equally as risky as the other, right? So it's really easy to get stuck in this analysis mode, constantly researching and planning, but never feeling confident enough to actually make a decision and move forward. Have you ever found yourself doing this? Think about it. Of course you have. Okay, probably we should ask ourselves the question of, have you found yourself doing it this week? And probably the answer to that also is yes. And I can say this because we all do it, right? We all find ourselves overanalyzing, getting stuck, getting distracted. Part of this entrepreneurship journey is really where we want to learn how to make faster, better decisions, right? So we don't just want to make faster decisions, right? Because we can all make really horrible, fast decisions. Decisions that weren't well thought out or even considered, right? That don't get us the result that we want, but we want to make better, fast decisions. So we really want to get to the point where we can make a good decision more quickly, which means doing research, planning, and analysis, but not overdoing research, planning, and analysis, right? We want to make faster, better decisions, not necessarily the absolute best decision. We want to make the best decision we can within time constraints, right? So remember that waiting for certainty does not exist. So the best decision doesn't exist, but the best decision within time constraints where we can make it a bit more quickly is good enough. So, okay. We also face a challenge of imposter syndrome, and this comes with that uncertainty, right? So how I was talking about all of the decisions and all of the research, all of the analysis, that is what triggers our imposter syndrome oftentimes. And when you're not sure what the next step is, it's really easy to convince yourself that you're not qualified to be doing this in the first place, which is not true. But this triggers, again, more of that cycle of more research, more second guessing, more busy work, so that you feel like you're taking action without actually really doing anything. So you really might find yourself responding to this uncertainty by constantly doing more research, switching strategies, looking for the newest approach, which all of this keeps you perpetually in the starting phase rather than building momentum with any single approach. All right, so it keeps you more scattered, keeps you feeling really busy, but you're never making progress, which is what we're driving home here. All right, so let's dig a little bit deeper into the specific ways that fear of failure is preventing you from doing your best work, because understanding these patterns is really the first step to breaking them and moving past them. All right, so fear makes us choose the path of least resistance, which usually means staying in your comfort zone rather than pushing yourself to grow. So what does this look like? All right, let's think about this. You will work really hard on tasks that feel safe rather than tackling a challenging task that could transform your business. So an example I can give of this is you would probably more likely spend 3 days writing the perfect email nurture sequence rather than spending 3 hours picking up the phone and calling potential clients or referral partners. Why is that? It's because one of those things feels safe and the other one does not, right? Because if you write those emails, you don't really have to put yourself out there, because if you write emails, no one could potentially reject you, right? And that's what we want. We want to stay safe. But the biggest trick here is that at the end of those 3 days, you will feel as if you've worked so much, but you won't even be one step closer to having a new client, right? You'll have done 10 times the amount of work as compared to if you picked up the phone and made phone calls, and you will not have another lead, not yet, right? So we do this and we sort of convince ourselves to do this, maybe work 10 times as hard, but make zero progress because our brains are trying to keep us safe. So I really want you to be honest with yourself about this. When you catch yourself going down the rabbit hole, learning more things, researching, rewriting, rethinking, absorbing all of the information and not doing or applying any of it. Like, what is it that you're doing? And is it just your brain getting in its way, trying to protect you, trying to keep you safe, right? We all have these obstacles to overcome. We all are dealing with information overload, comparison, social media, distractions online, our imposter syndrome, our environment. And with all of that going on, it is no wonder that we find ourselves either choosing the thing that keeps us safe, which is staying busy but not doing things that are going to make a big difference in our business, or we just don't do anything at all, right? So avoidance, procrastination, excuses, justification. This is I know I should be doing XYZ, but I just can't motivate myself to do it, right? That thought or that statement. This is just one more way that your brain is keeping you safe. Because if you never actually do it, if you never actually try or never really put yourself out there, then you're never going to fail, right? Or at least that's what your brain is telling you. You can always blame your failure on something else, something that isn't you. And that's what we really want, is to avoid being a failure, right? So because how would we feel if we really gave it our all? You really went for it with your business. You gave it all that you've got. You faced the scary things and you did them anyway. You listened to these podcast episodes and you put them into action. You used 3 days to talk to people and offer them to help them rather than writing your email nurture sequence and creating social media posts. If you really put yourself out there and did all of the things and then it still didn't work, well, that would be too painful. So instead, we quietly reach the same result. But we've got some scapegoats, right? We act like we are busy. We do a lot of things, but we avoid the things that will most move the needle. And then when we don't get clients, or we feel burnt out, or our time is too crammed with so many distractions, we can blame our failure on everything else, right? The social media algorithm changed. My schedule got too busy. My kids were home from school. Even this one, I didn't really try, because that is easier to accept than I put myself out there. I did everything I possibly could and it still didn't work. This is why so many people don't do the hard things. It's not because they aren't capable. It's not because they don't care. And it's not because they don't want the thing they say they do. It's because it's more comfortable to not have it than to risk failing trying to get it. Ouch. I see this playing out far too often. And guys, I can catch myself in this too from time to time. We likely all go through it. I don't think any of us are completely immune. We are so afraid to fail that we allow ourselves to just quietly fade away, hoping no one will notice that we've just created for ourselves the very thing that we're trying to avoid, which is failure, right? So as I was thinking about this, I was like, I really wish and think that we all need to embrace this mentality of failing loudly, right? Like I would rather fail out loud than fail by quietly shrinking away and not doing the thing that I said I wanted to do. So this idea means that instead of shrinking, avoiding, not taking action, instead you commit to loud failure, which is what we're going to call it. Okay, I think I just coined this term, so it was said here first. But we are going to decide that we aren't just going to shrink away and quietly let ourselves fail, but that we're going to fail by actually putting ourselves out there, right? We're going to embrace this. We're going to take this risk. If you're going to fail either way, one way or another, either by not doing the things that you need to do to make your business successful, well, I would rather fail by at least letting people know what I'm trying to do to begin with. And wouldn't it be so cool if, because you were okay with embracing this idea of loud failure, that it meant that you were doing the hard things, not the quiet things, not the researching more, perfecting more, quietly working alone by yourself more, but instead you were talking more, presenting more, offering people to help them more. And maybe, just maybe, those things would actually make you successful. What do you think? Are you up for a little experiment with loud failure? I would love to see every entrepreneur embrace this mentality. I think it would dramatically change the success rate for small businesses, but the choice is up to you. So what will you choose? All right. So if I've convinced you, let's talk about how we can break through this fear barrier, right? Because the good news is that fear of failure doesn't have to control you and your results forever. There are some things that you can do to push through these barriers. So let's talk about a few things that might help. So first, you can start by redefining failure as feedback, right? So rather than judgment on your worth or your abilities, really you can look at it as a way that is teaching you some valuable information about what works and what doesn't work, which is going to get you closer to the thing that works, right? So again, we're not failing, but we're going to at least put ourselves out there and embrace this. Another thing that you can do is break some of those really big, audacious, amazing goals into some smaller, less intimidating actions. So instead of setting a goal of making $100,000 in your business this year, what if you commit to having 5 Q&A calls this week? Right? The smaller step feels less intimidating and more approachable. And quite frankly, 5 Q&A calls this week is probably the thing that you need to do to work towards earning $100,000 this year. You can also create accountability systems that make it harder to avoid the important work. So over the last couple of episodes, I've talked a lot about the mastermind and how that is one great place to have accountability, support, expert guidance, people around you to encourage you. And that really can help in this instance as well when you're facing this fear of failure and imposter syndrome. Having something like the mastermind with you can allow you to move through it a bit more easily and to hold you accountable to getting the things done that actually matter, right? Not all of the quiet things in the background. This other one, you want to practice taking imperfect action consistently. So imperfect action consistently. I was at a leadership conference. This was probably almost a decade ago. And one of the speakers had talked about one of the biggest things that improved movement in his company was embracing this idea of GETMO, GETMO. I've talked about this multiple times. You've maybe never heard me talk about it before, but I love using this reference because it really stuck with me. And he said, I finally figured out that perfect was not the place to get to. I wanted to get to the place where it was good enough to move on. Getmo, good enough to move on, right? So we want to get it to a place that it's like, it's fine, it's good enough, I can come back, I can work on it and get it better later, but it's good enough to move on. That is the goal. We don't want to get it to perfect because that will hold you back forever. So really this commitment to imperfect action ties into this idea or philosophy of Getmo, right? Good enough to move on is the new standard rather than perfection, okay? You also are really going to want to set some boundaries for yourself and limit your information consumption and focus on implementation instead. So really choose one strategy, commit to testing it, and then moving through and on to the next thing. We don't want to just keep learning and learning and learning and not implementing and taking action on that thing, all right? We want to build a tolerance for discomfort because discomfort is good. Discomfort is a sign of growth. You are never uncomfortable if you're in your comfort zone, right? I just remember hearing this idea of like learning to dance with your fear, right? When you feel that fear come up, when you feel that discomfort come up, to lean into it and embrace it and be like, this is a sign that I am growing, not this is a sign that I should not do this thing and running away from it, right? So that discomfort and embracing discomfort is a sign that you're getting better, that you're learning, that you're evolving, that you're doing something new. And that is a very, very, very good thing because you cannot become a successful entrepreneur without growth. Right? So you want to embrace the growth and embrace the discomfort. One way that you can do this is, of course, to ease into some of the things that you're doing. So I know earlier I gave that example of making 3 hours of phone calls and outreach and offering to help people for 3 hours. Well, you don't necessarily have to start with 3 full hours. That might feel like a big leap on your first time trying to pick up the phone. So maybe start with 3 phone calls, right? Just 3 phone calls. And then the next week do 4 and the next week 5 and so on to make it more and more of a challenge to keep pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone and building upon that. All right. We want you to celebrate your progress along the way, right? Not just the outcomes, because the growth that happens on the way is worth acknowledging. Most of our time happens in the progress and not the destination. So we should definitely acknowledge that, acknowledge where you're taking action, even if the results are not what you hope for, because again, you're learning something along the way. And even in the beginning, all of the actions that you're taking, it is planting seeds. And the more that you do it, the more it compounds. So really celebrate each of those positive steps that you've done, to work loudly, right? And be unafraid to fail loudly. All right. And then remember that every successful business owner has failed multiple times. This road is not easy. It is not for the faint of heart. We all have failed at things. And really what matters is that you get back up, you keep working despite those failures, and you don't let them stop you. All right. So here are a few things that you can do this week. Identify one important task that you've been avoiding because it feels risky or uncomfortable. So this is probably something that could significantly move your business forward if you just did it. And it would probably take a lot less time to complete than what you're building up in your head, right? So if it's picking up the phone and making phone calls, that's just one example. It certainly isn't the only one. But think of those things that are on your list that you know you should be doing, but you keep avoiding, procrastinating, or coming up with excuses for. Those are probably the things that will make the biggest difference and move the needle the most. Break that task into the smallest possible first step and commit to doing just that one thing today. So today, like I said, you can listen to this podcast, but now I want you to take action. We're not just in learning mode, but we're in taking action mode. So when you get done listening, think about the thing that you've been avoiding, break it into the smallest viable task to get started with and do that thing today. Don't worry about doing the whole project. Just focus on getting started. In my example of making phone calls, pick up the phone and make one phone call to that person that told you they kind of would like some help with their money and you never followed up with them. It's okay to do it now. You can. All right. Set up your environment to support focused work. So this is another important thing you can do. Don't do this though before you do the other thing. All right. We're not going to keep avoiding things by doing quiet things in the background that are a distraction, but cleaning up your environment is important. So try to block some time maybe this week where you can clean up where you work. Make sure that it is somewhere that you can be focused. Put your phone in another room when you're working. Use website blockers so you're not getting dings and notifications so that you can do more focused and intentional work. Choose one source of business education and stick with it for the next month instead of jumping between different things. I see this all the time with coaches that I work with and mentor where they feel very distracted or very overwhelmed, or they have so many different ideas going on, or they start feeling imposter syndrome. And when we talk about it, a lot of times it is because they are consuming so much information, getting so much coaching and direction from all these different sources, and it really is bogging their brain down. So choose one source and say, this is the one I'm going to lean into for the next month. I'm going to put a reminder on my calendar 30 days from now to reevaluate this, see how it's going, see if I want to switch and learn from a different place, but sort of pare back a little bit on the learning so that you really can be more focused and apply that. All right. Find someone who can hold you accountable. So share with them what your weekly goals are, whether it's another coach, a business friend, a family member, just someone who understands that you're trying to accomplish things. If you're someone that's in our mastermind, of course, you know we're always asking you to share with us in there what you're working on, but that accountability and follow-up can really be helpful. And start tracking your progress, right? Start tracking your progress on those actions. Even if you're not quite getting the result yet, we want to see that you are taking action and not just quietly working behind the scenes, doing things that aren't actually going to move you forward. All right. So remember that the goal is not to eliminate all fear. We are all going to feel it. It does not go away. We might overcome it in one area and then it pops up in another one, so don't be surprised. But it's just really important to keep doing the work despite the fear, okay? So keep moving forward. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is taking action while still feeling afraid. All right, you guys, that's all that I've got for you today. I hope that this helps you. I hope it inspires you to get into action and to acknowledge maybe some of the places you could be holding yourself back. Next week, we're going to talk about how having better Q&A calls can definitely convert your prospects into clients, the places that you might be holding yourself back. Can't wait to dive into it with you guys. Thanks for sticking with me this week, and I will see you next time.
That's all for today. If you're ready to grow your own financial coaching business, head over to financialcoachacademy.com for helpful resources and tools. If this episode helped you, hit subscribe and leave us a review. I'll see you next week.